Salut class, this video concerns a topic that you all want to use and have tried to use and I tell you not to use, but I want you to know how to use it correctly if you ever do need to use. That is the passive voice. The passive voice is used in French and in English in the same way, though we like to try to avoid using it when possible. For active voice, the subject in the sentence is acting, while for passive voice, the subject is not doing anything. The action described by the verb is being done to the subject by an agent. Okay, so we'll look at some examples to make that a little bit more clear. So we have our sentence, Elise reads the book. This is a sentence in active voice. Elise is your subject, reads is your verb, the book is your object. Elise is doing the acting. Elise is doing the reading. So that makes this sentence active voice. So now let's look at the sentence with the same idea but in passive voice. It's this sentence. The book is now the subject. Is read is your verb. You need to be. And then the past participle of the verb. By. And now your subject is here now. So the subject of the first sentence is now there. And so she is the actor, but the actor, Elise, is not the subject of the sentence. The subject is the book, but the book is doing nothing. The book is being read by Elise. So that's the difference between active voice and passive voice. Now let's look at the same sentence but in French. Like I said, passive voice is the same in English and in French. So we have Elise, lit le livre. Elise is the subject, lit the verb, et le livre the object. In active voice, because Elise is reading, lit le livre. She is the actor. Similarly in French, to put in the passive voice, we have le livre est lu par Elise. So le livre is the subject, est lu is the verb, but we've got the verb to be, and we've got the past participle. And then we have by, par, and then what used to be the subject is now there. So again, the subject of the sentence, le livre, is doing nothing in this sentence, which makes it passive voice. So we use the passive voice when we want to put more emphasis on the person or thing that is performing the action. It just ends up putting more emphasis on that. Or we do it to focus on an action without identifying the performer. So we often see this in the news. If we don't know who did something, then we use the passive voice. But as I've said several times, it's better to avoid the passive voice when possible. So first we're going to talk about how it's constructed, and then we're going to talk about how to avoid it. So to create the passive voice, you use the conjugated form of être plus the past participle. Okay? And the past participle must agree in gender and number. So we have these three examples of passive voice. Le livre est écrit par des lycéens. So you notice le livre est masculin, so écrit is also. La vaisselle est faite par Henri. La vaisselle is feminine, so we add the E to make it faite. Et les enfants sont nourris par Luc. Les enfants is plural, so we make nourris agree with that. So when we're talking about prepositions with the passive voice, when the verb expresses an action, the agent, the thing doing the acting, is introduced by the preposition par. So David fait la vaisselle from active voice changes to la vaisselle est faite par David. So doing the dishes is an action, so we use par. Je mange le gâteau. Mange is an action, so the sentence in passive voice becomes le gâteau est mangé par moi. So we use par. The other preposition that we use is used when the verb expresses a state of being. We use the preposition de. So, for example, tout le monde le respecte avec un E ici. Tout le monde le respecte becomes il est respecté de tout le monde. And mes amis aiment mon frère in the passive voice becomes mon frère est aimé de mes amis. It's just a difference of what type of verb it is. So what we need to look at now is how do we use the passive voice in other tenses. And this is what we generally get confused about and what we have been in our writing so far. All of the examples so far have been in the present tense because être has been conjugated in the present tense. So in order to change it to different tenses, we conjugate être for whatever tense we want to do. So this is an example for the present. Anne fait la tarte, present tense. La tarte est faite par Anne. So now let's take a look at some of our other tenses that we may want to speak in the passive voice. Here's how you would use the passive voice for le passé composé, active voice, and Anne a fait la tarte. So a fait is in passé composé. So to put into passive voice, we put être into the passé composé. So it becomes la tarte a été faite par Anne. For the imparfait, active voice, we have Anne faisait la tarte. But for the passive voice, we have la tarte était faite par Anne. Faisait in the imparfait, so être in the imparfait. For the future, Anne fera la tarte. La tarte sera faite par Anne. Future, future. And finally, everybody's favorite, the subjunctive. Je veux qu'Anne fasse la tarte. Je veux que la tarte soit faite par Anne. So subjunctive, subjunctive. Now I would like you to do the practice by changing the sentences from active voice to passive voice. So pause the video, and once you're done, you can press play to see the answers. Here are the answers, so check your work well. So as I've said, we shouldn't use the passive voice if it's possible to avoid it. So now I'm going to give you 2 ways that we can avoid using the passive voice if necessary. So if we look at this sentence, ce livre a été écrit par un enfant, we can use the expression c'est qui to get rid of the passive voice. So we take un enfant, that's who is doing it. So c'est un enfant. Qui, and then the action in active voice. C'est un enfant qui a écrit ce livre. So now we have our verb in active voice again. I'd like you to pause the video and try number 2 using the c'est qui. Here's the answer for the second one. C'est mes parents qui paient la facture. So now mes parents is the actor and payer is now in the active voice. So we can also use the pronoun on to make a sentence active again. So le gâteau est mangé avec du lait. So we want to make the verb manger active again. So we can use on mange le gâteau avec du lait. So our verb manger becomes active again now because we have the general you or one acting as the subject who is doing the eating. Now pause the video and try number 2. We now have the sentence on parle français en classe. So these are some helpful ways to avoid the passive voice when possible. This concludes this video about the passive voice. I hope that you can use it well now. If you need to, rewatch and rewind the video, and please ask me any questions if you have any.